This is Auntie Up, Indigenous women talking about important shit.
Tanze, welcome to Auntie Up, a podcast by Indigenous women from across Turtle Island. I'm Brandi Morin, and I'll be your guest host for this episode alongside Celeste Pedri-Spade. So I've been telling Indigenous stories across Turtle Island for about 8 years and been doing journalism for over 10 years. And I now bring these stories to a national and international level. Love what I do. Last weekend, I just got back from the craziest assignment of my career. I've been to a lot of different stories and different crisis situations, but what's going down at the Fairy Creek blockades on so-called Vancouver Island and the Pacheedaht territories is, just a war zone. It's a literal war zone. And I was actually quite shooken up by it and noticed this rumbling that's happening in so-called BC with Indigenous land defenders. And so I'm really excited to be a part of this show today. So specifically in this episode, we're going to be delving in hard, talking about land and really understanding why it's so vitally important that we protect the land for not only ourselves, but future generations, because we all know you can't drink oil. Celeste?
Bonjour, Brandi. It's so good to be here for such an important topic. I'm talking to everybody today from K-Town, from Kingston, Ontario, but I am an Anishinaabe from Lac de Mille Lacs First Nation, also known as Nizatikang, or Place of Poplars. And this is where I spend several months of the year with my partner and our children. And this topic is very close to me, to my family, because we strive to maintain our living relationships with our homelands. And this is often very challenging. You know, I work at Queen's University, and then I have to drive 20 hours up north just to see my family. But, this has been a struggle for many families in Nizatikang. Our community has for over a century-long history of being displaced from Nizatikang due to a series of floods caused by both private and public hydroelectric dams. But we keep coming back and are actually right now in the process of rebuilding yet again, rebuilding our homes and our infrastructure. And like as many people in my family have had to do already. So this topic really hits home for me. And, because I feel, really connected to and having this personal experience of what it means to really struggle to maintain connections to my homelands.
Hi. I didn't properly introduce myself, so I'm from Treaty 6 in Alberta. I'm Cree, Iroquois, and French. My family is from the Michel First Nation, and the Michel were made an example of by the Canadian government and completely enfranchised in our land, corruptly stolen in the late 1950s. So we're in a similar kind of battle. So I'm so excited to talk with both of our guests. This is one strong, amazing Mohawk woman who's been fighting this fight for over 30 years. That's when all eyes were on Kanesatake as they went toe-to-toe with the provincial police and the Canadian Army. The people of the Longhouse stopped the expansion of a golf course onto their lands, also known as the Oka Crisis. Ellen Gabriel continues to defend Mohawk land to this day, and just this summer was keeping a watchful eye out. We're going to talk to her about that.
Also joining us is a land defender on the front lines trying to stop the construction of the Trans Mountain Pipeline going through her traditional Secwepemc territory in BC. In October 2019, she was arrested by the RCMP for protecting her homelands. She comes from a long line of activists, including her father, Arthur Manuel, and her grandfather, George Manuel, who was the chief in the National Indian Brotherhood. So, it's an honor to introduce and welcome Kanahus Manuel. Miigwech for being here with us.
So, hi to both of you for being here with us on Auntie Up. And this is the podcast that holds no punches. So, wondering, where are you speaking to us from, Ellen?
I'm in Ganasadaga, Ganyak-Kahaga territory. It's the oldest Ganyak-Kahaga community or Mohawk community of all the ones existing. And I am pleased to be on the show. Thank you for inviting me.
Hi, Kanahus.
Yeah, I'm coming to you from Tiny House Warriors in unceded, unsurrendered Secwepemc territory. We're here on the front lines, the battle against Trans Mountain Pipeline. Thank you.
Ellen, you've been a force all of your life, from the Oka crisis and traveling and advocating internationally to raise awareness about the violation of Mohawk rights. Then you taught art in your community, and you were the president of the Quebec Native Women's Association. You also campaigned against sexual discrimination in the Indian Act, helping to transform Bill C-31. And you've even advocated at the highest level of governments in the world at the United Nations. So I'm wondering, what haven't you done? Wondering, where does your strength come from?
I think it's, when you live in a province that speaks French and imposes French upon you, sometimes it's a little bit, you have that little extra fight in you than you would in the rest of Canada. But it's an interesting place to grow up in. I don't know. I don't give away my secrets, but I do. The Pines is a really beautiful place to live in and to be in. I was taught to be proud of my heritage in spite of the racism we encountered in school by my parents, and I think it's just being experiencing what we have in Ganasadaga for our struggles 300 years, and so it's a multi-generational fight. And we have a lot of elders who have given us the stories, and it makes us more determined, those of us on the front lines anyways, it makes us more determined that those stories are not lost and that their fight is not in vain. For us, in 1990, we stood up to protect the Pines, and what people saw were men with guns. They didn't look at the women and the role of the women. The strong role that the women played without the weapons, and confronting the SQ and the army without weapons. So my inspiration is all those women who have been before me, who have fought and have tried to make our voices heard in amongst a patriarchal society that is just, as we have seen with the Indian residential school story, a society that was apathetic, but also an intent to destroy Indigenous peoples. So as a Ganyak-Kahaga person, as a Mohawk person, we have been battling a colonizer for 500 years. We have had this battle for centuries. And when, for me, I don't like bullies. I don't like how they function, and I think that's what Canada is. They're bullies, and it's really not easy to continue the fight. As long as I have, it does take its toll, and it's really difficult in a patriarchy where the band council chiefs are the ones who are recognized as having the valid voice and not the voice of the people. Our way of structure and our governance, our traditional governance, is that everybody is equal, and in fact the chiefs and clan mothers are below the people because they have to do the work for the people. They have to listen to the people and hear what they have to say, and the band council system is total hierarchy. So it's a struggle, and I guess like I said, stubborn Ganyak-Kahaga woman, fighting to get our voices heard, fighting to protect our lands. And for us, 31 years later, we've lost more land. We have our own people bringing in organized crime with the marijuana shacks, not all the people, but marijuana shacks, all kinds of strange things that it does not reflect the community that I grew up in. So it's like, I think you have no choice. For us as Indigenous people, it's a way of life. We have no choice but to fight for our survival. And I think that's what motivates me, is that spirit to survive.
Wow. So, speaking of, survival and the recognition of elected chief and council systems, like, I've been wondering what your thoughts are on the rumbling that's happening across Indian country, specifically right now in so-called British Columbia. So there's the fight to protect old growth forests in Fairy Creek. There's the TMX battle that Kanahus is on the front lines of protecting her traditional lands, and the Wet'suwet'en conflict with the Coastal GasLink pipeline. And there are some others simmering there too, but these are the ones where police actions are getting out of hand. And the Mohawks are allies of the Wet'suwet'en and Gitxsan nations. So after all these years since the Oka crisis, are you surprised that this is still going on? And what do you think will unfold?
Yeah, well, 31 years later, I want people to correct it. Oka caused the crisis. Kanesatake and Ganawage bore the brunt of that dysfunction and that genocidal act. And, people were asking us that right from what they thought was the finish of that time period, and if there would be another one. And we said, yeah, as long as, if we look at the structure of Canada, land claims, so-called land claims, and the fact that we're still under the Indian Act, I don't understand why people are not surprised. It's still fueled by the same thing that came over with the ships in 1492. It's fueled by greed. It's fueled by fear, with the fear mongering through religion or whatever. The government says a lot of nice flowery words, but there's no reparations. There's no land back as we lose more land. And, I think that it's just another day in this colonial occupied country where you have foreign investors. And people forget about Stephen Harper when he was that he had this agreement with China, and China said anybody who stands in their way of I think they're associated with some pipelines, anyone who stands in their way can be sued. So the government of Canada is doing its best to satisfy its foreign investors. It pretends to be a human rights advocate, when in actuality, it does not respect the rights of Indigenous peoples. Just like it's not correcting the curriculum system of what happened in the Indian residential schools, and they've known about it for decades. It's not correcting the fact that the Indian Act is still keeping us oppressed. So you will have activities, illegal activities in the communities, because there's so much economic depression. We're losing more land, so we have not only loss of access to our lands, or loss of access to the medicines that grow on the lands. Our waters are contaminated. And for here, we have a toxic waste dump that was started by two Mohawk brothers from this community who have been allowed to get away with things 31 years. And the Canadian government does not apply their so-called environmental laws. It looks the other way. So it creates the divide and conquer within our communities so that we don't move forward. And so it's really, really difficult, because at the end of the day, they look, well, you all got to speak with one voice, when Canada and its provinces do not speak with one voice. So it's a very complicated story. And I think, I'm glad that the youth are rising up stronger, that they're kind of learning from the mistakes of the past. But, they have to remember what the role of the women are in this process, and respect the role of the women, not just say, okay, the women are in the front lines and here comes the men. We're gonna be the ones negotiating. When it's quite the opposite. It should be on an equal level footing. And Canada's laws have never protected us. And I think people need to realize that we need to go to a different kind of level. And perhaps, we need a big mind change within our own selves to try and bring that unity together so we can fight it together.
Right. And Ellen, you touched upon like IRS, like this history, this ongoing legacy of settler colonial violence aimed at our people. You talk about the power and the role of women. And, you talked about, mothers and grandmothers and aunties. And, Kanahus, I'm just thinking about, I think your mom, I think I read somewhere you're a mom of 4. Correct me if I'm wrong. I have 4. I have a 9-year-old, 8-year-old, 6-year-old, and an 18-month-old, 3 boys and a girl. And so I'm just wondering about, how your, identity and your responsibilities that are attached to motherhood and your role as a traditional birth keeper have informed your responsibilities to the land.
Yeah, I'm a mother of 4 children, and I gave birth to all of them out in the mountains, and it's just one of the most empowering experiences because I had to learn everything I needed myself, and knowing that I wasn't depending on any midwife or anyone with the knowledge to come with me. And so I learned all of this knowledge by myself so I can do it. And it was one of the biggest empowering moments of my life and one of the most powerful ceremonies that I could have. And it empowered so much other women. And there's so much women in my circle that have become traditional birth keepers, women that I've helped with at births, what they call unassisted births, but we're bringing back our traditional ways. And we don't have anything like the Mohawks have where they're actually recognized midwives. So we're still fighting for that over on this end. But it's one of our big things, even in our political alliances with people, because you're not just trusting anybody to deliver your baby and work with you and your family when you're expecting your baby, especially when you're not depending on the Western, like the medical system and stuff. So we created a lot of ties and solidarity and allies just by being present at births and people feeling confident to have our family present at births. It's not only myself, it's my mom, Beverly Manuel, and my twin sister, Mayik Manuel, and my other younger sister, Snudetwa Manuel. We're all birth workers, so we all attend births together. And it's one of the most powerful experiences I have as a woman is reclaiming our birth and reclaiming our tattoos and reclaiming our language and just everything we need to be Sukwatmo.
Yeah, what you're saying reminds me of something my mom was saying like a while back to me when I'm a scholar, I'm an artist, and I was talking about Indigenous sovereignty, and she kind of said, my girl, that our people we won't be totally sovereign again until our women can birth our children on our lands and do that on our together. And it was like really emotional for me to hear that, because I know that my great grandmother birthed my grandmother was born in the bush, and we have stories of even how to do our own medical interventions, this idea that, we didn't have the knowledge to do that in a safe way. Where there's stories in my family of how women could do, different kinds of procedures that, that when they needed to. And so that really resonates with me when I listen to you, Miigwech.
Yeah, there's women that I went and reached out to around the world to teach me everything I know, because there isn't really any practicing midwives out in this part of our country. And I went all the way down to Belize to go meet with the Mopan Mayan midwives, where they deliver thousands of babies, and they've never had any type of birth deaths and everything. So that's something that we have to really look at, and it's more dangerous and risky to go into the hospital nowadays. And so I find that more Indigenous women are choosing to have home births, and more Indigenous women are choosing to learn the skills needed to start practicing, becoming a doula, to a birth worker, a traditional midwife. And it just makes me so happy, because I didn't have that option, because if I did have that option, I would have had somebody right there with me. And we're lucky to have other midwives who are non-native midwives that have chosen to bring us in and train us too in their ways, just building and taking us in just the same way they would take a UBC midwife student in and have us working in the clinics and working with the mothers and prenatal and postnatal, postpartum and stuff. So yeah, it's needed. And what I was saying right here, like right exactly where I am, Trans Mountain fenced off 11 acres of land for a man camp for this pipeline to house 550 pipeline workers. They never even gave that permit to this pipeline company. If we had 11 acres, we could build a pit house village. We could have a birthing center. We could have a healing center. We could have, a trauma healing center. We could have so much in this 11 acres right by Blue River where they never wanted Secwepemc people to even exist. Like, we're off reserve, taking back land now, face off, direct face to face with these pipeline workers that are coming in to build this map camp. Every time we step up, we're criminalized. And from the birth ceremonies, and we raise our young people up. They know that it was warriors that helped deliver them.
Wow. So, Kanahus, I want to keep you for a minute longer. So, your dad was an Indigenous rights legend, and you're a badass. But do you feel threatened by police? Like, you're this mother out there, and you're, living your traditional ways, but you are also in this fight for the survival of yours and your children's future, and being arrested, and just wondering, like, what is it like living on high alert on a continual basis like that?
I've just grown to adapt to it and live with it, because they're just parked right outside our front door, practically on the other side of the blockade right now. And they actually formed a new unit called the Community Industry Response Group for Indigenous resistance, like us, Tiny House Warriors, like the Wet'suwet'en fighting the Coastal GasLink. And now the SERG unit is there at Fairy Creek in full force. They're there to really create intimidation and harass the people, to deter people from standing up and fighting back for our land. And when we know and we stand with our heart and our soul for our land, we know what we're doing is right. We don't have no fear. I have two of my children. They're just making noise right next to me right now. But I have two of my children here with me, my youngest children with me. And, not too much mothers would bring their children onto the front line and create a home for them on the front line. But I really want to train my children and raise my children this way, because if I am just sitting on the reservation, I'm a limited amount of organizing I can do. I have to be on my land. And my father always said that. And after he passed, I wanted to ensure that I upheld some of his teachings by keeping our fight on the ground, on the land, off the reserve.
So, like, before we go back to Ellen, can you just share with our listeners a little bit about Tiny House Warriors and what's happening there?
Tiny House Warriors is a mission to stop the Trans Mountain Pipeline. We're building tiny houses on wheels to deploy in different areas along this pipeline route. It's all the way from Edmonton all the way to Vancouver area, Burnaby Mountain. So it's a over 1,000-kilometer pipeline. Half of it goes through our territory here in Secwepemc. And we moved our tiny houses to several different locations. First one was our Pit House Village site at Clearwater Provincial Park, North Thompson River Provincial Park, where there's hundreds of pit house depressions, remnants of our village site, where the pipeline wants to go right through and right by along the North Thompson River, major salmon river. And we set up there only to get evicted with a little small provincial park eviction notice. I was arrested. We moved these tiny houses to Blue River, where we're at right now. We have 6 of them here confronting this man camp that we've been here for 3 years now. And now they just fenced it off. And they're just a new modern day native land theft on how they come and just fence it off and have these low level provincial permits to take land when we have internationally respected rights. Like, we have inherent law and rights to our land here. And we keep saying and being vocal, because if we're silent, then nobody's saying anything. You only have the elected chief and council system that's trying to speak for the people, and they're selling the people out right now with these pipeline deals. And so we're facing off, like what Ellen said, like this divide and conquer is still at play. The Canadian government has gotten very witty and very smart and strategic on this divide and conquer tactics that they're using to take land, for Indigenous people to extinguish title, because we've never extinguished our title here in so-called BC. So that's what they're doing with these pipeline agreements. And then they convince these two silly men to buy the pipeline, one and calling it a reconciliation pipeline. So they're doing a bunch of crazy things out here. And these are Native men, brown business people that are trying to fall for these tricks by Canada still.
Yeah, and I just want to note that this pipeline, TMX, is owned by Canada now. And so, Kanahus is literally in a fight against the state in this situation. So I was there last summer. I went for a few days to report for the National Observer. And there was a police presence there, and Kanahus shared with me, like, they're constantly stalked and surveilled. They deal with snipers and drones. So just imagine being stalked and surveilled on your own territories day in and day out. It's insane. So let's talk land back. So there is a movement for Indigenous rights and sovereignty that's storming across the lands. Not only on Turtle Island, but around the world. So, Ellen, I'm wondering, what does the phrase land back and the land back movement mean to you?
Yeah, I think it's something that ancestors have always been talking about. It's just that we're on social media and we can hashtag it. But it means, we have land for, the children, the babies right now, that they'll have something to look forward to, and to be able to have access to be able to use the land as for things like what Kanahus was talking about, trauma centers. We are survivors of a genocide that seems to be ongoing, and how do you undo? How do you recover from that? How do you stop the multi-generational trauma that said, taught us don't speak, don't feel, and don't trust? It's going to take a long time. And as the government drags its feet in trying to, I hate to say this word, reconcile with Indigenous people, we are losing more land. We are losing to the pipelines, the tar sands, urban sprawl, the toxic waste dumps, which are the majority of them are in communities of color. I think for me, land back is all those things, but more. It means that we are going to be upholding the traditional laws of our people, which means we are doing something, leaving a legacy for future generations to be able to enjoy the land as we have, in the sense that, when I was a kid, you could swim in the river. I wouldn't swim in this river, the St. Lawrence River, at all, ever again. But to stop this craziness that is killing, is going to kill our species, because the Mother Earth is going to survive long after we're extinct. It's to be able to survive what is coming with climate change. It's to be able to support efforts like what Kanahus and the Tiny House Warriors are trying to do, which is protect, the preciousness of life that the Earth gives to us. That we are as women understand what it means to nurture, what it means to nourish. And I don't think that capitalism understands that concept. So land back is not just about getting back our land, our traditional homelands, but it's fighting capitalism, which is destroying the quality of life for Indigenous people for centuries, and being able to provide some kind of hope for the future, because I think land back is also about hope. Land back is also about being able to give that hope to that generation, that we're not just going to have to keep fighting, that there will be a generation of Indigenous children and youth that will not have to fight. And to me, that's what land back. I think it's taking away the decision-making processes from the abuser, It's taking away that from people who do not understand the preciousness of land.
Everything you're saying, Ellen, it reminds me about how land back is about shifting a way of thinking, because a lot of what you encounter is what undermines that is this extractivist logic, this idea that we can just take and take and take and take for the land, like from the land, and that somehow everything will just be okay, and it's always, again, about the accumulation of personal wealth and capital. And I think, you talk a lot about the importance of, living in good relations with the land as our relative. And that does take a completely different way of thinking about the world that we live in, so I really appreciate listening to you articulate all of that. I kind of want to listen. I looked you up, Ellen, and I came across some of your artwork. And, I do art as well. And, I looked at some of your paintings that explore, themes of land and family and women. And I thought maybe you could comment on what you think the role of art is in all of this work, in land back.
Yeah, I think art is really important. It's the richness of a culture. It's the richness of the people and what they think in their minds. And it's also a non-threatening way to educate people. For me, it's been therapeutic to when you suffer trauma, you need an outlet to be able to understand what your body is telling you and what your mind is telling you. And art is whether you're beading or painting or drawing or whatever, dance, song, these are forms of expression that are healing. And so art is really extremely important for us to nurture that in everybody, no matter what your age. We're all equal no matter what our age. So art for me is an important part of my life, and I think it will continue to be an important part of my life. It's a different way to leave a legacy behind. And thanks.
Kanahus, just wondering, what does land back mean to you?
Well, I've been saying land back means fight back. We can't get our land back without fighting for it. They're not going to give it back. My dad would say they're not going to give your land back. You got to fight for it. But another thing he would also say is that if they gave land back to you today, how would you manage and look after this? Because we have all these mountains everywhere and all these rivers and salmon and everything. So how would you manage it? Because if you don't have anything in place, that someone from the band office is going to say, oh, I know how to manage it. And it's going to fall right into the province's mandate and how they want to manage it. How they have their mining and logging and water extraction, everything already allocated for our lands, but if we were to take it back, what industries and what, economies would be flourishing if we did. And that the climate change, the fight would stop because we would ensure that our land was protected. And so those are the types of things, because I believe that we're economists too. We're a strong economist and actually flourished and was better than anyone else because we actually didn't destroy the economy to build an economy.
It was more of a barter system, right?
Yeah, and I believe the way I talk about our economics is that it's just this beautiful relationship with our earth, and it's actually a reciprocal relationship that we give back. One of the examples is that we have our huckleberries, very powerful trade item, our huckleberries, or our scosa, another berry, very high trade item. We would trade for ooligan grease even, the scosa. But when we prune the bushes, we'd collect the medicines, we'd collect the leaf, the branch, the berries, and we'd break it, and that would actually prune the bush. So the next year, we would go back and the berries and the bushes would be even more bountiful. And when the white people came here, they thought, wow, this land is just so full of bounty, rich of all these resources. But they never considered the hundreds of generations, thousands of generations of the sweat, equity, blood, sweat, and tears, and everything and hard work that everybody put into this land to make it the rich resource country that it is, and are still benefiting off of stripping us of all the wealth And like Ellen said, they're going to keep on taking and keep on taking. But if we start to make these plans, and I believe like even working collectively amongst the nations, Indigenous nations together, to collectively take some land back together and then go, if we have, 1 million Indigenous, Métis, Inuit, all the people across Canada, that's 1 million. We can organize numbers, especially when the majority is youth and you start seeing all these youth. Like there's big things that could happen across Indian country, big things, especially with Auntie Up and all the aunties rising up and organizing the young people.
So just wondering, like, I think it was just a few days ago, Mark Miller got assigned by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as the new Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations. And he said, he talked about land back, and he said it's time to give land back. And I've never seen a politician say that before. What do you think about that?
I think he's trying to water down our powerful, that we've took control of that. Indigenous people, our resistance, our movement straight across the country, around the world, we took that. That was young people from Edmonton area that really created that hashtag that went viral all around. But we've been always saying, and it was something that we could all fall under the same banner, the same, we know what each other's talking about when we say land back. And so he's trying to water this word down. We're not going to let him hijack it, because really, if they really, 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 really want land back, then they're going to have a big battle right now in Canada, and it's going to be an uprising of Indigenous people to take it back. Don't just say it, like that's what we're about right now. We actually want to see it on the ground. Like Ellen says, we're fighting so our children don't have to fight for it. They're going to actually have it back.
Yeah, and if I could just add, like last year we had a Zoom meeting with him and Carolyn Bennett and a bunch of bureaucrats on what's been going on in Ganasavagi, the archaeological digs without a free, prior, and informed consent, because the Band Council said, yeah. He told me that it is impossible for the Prime Minister to put a moratorium on development here. He told me that it's too complicated. It's not an issue that they're interested in resolving after what we went through in 1990. So I agree with Kanahus. I think he's trying to be the friend of Indigenous people, and perhaps he is a good man. Perhaps he is sincere. He thinks he's being sincere, but he's not the system. He is a cog in the machine, and it is not up to him. It is a system that is controlled by invisible hands. It is a system that is controlled by people with a lot of money, greedy money, and they continue to buy and sell our land without a free, prior, and informed consent. So they're going to be ones setting up the criteria of what land back is, and they're going to try and hijack that hashtag from us, and we can't let them take it.
Wow. Okay, so we're going to be just wrapping up here really quick. I'm just wondering if both of you can offer a word of inspiration, I guess, for maybe some young ones out there that are looking into, getting involved with land back, or, are looking for some guidance. What would you say to them?
Oh, I would say to them not to ever give up, and that sometimes this fight will wear you down. You'll get battle fatigue. It'll affect you, but don't stop. You rest, you get your rest, eat good food, nourish yourself, and dust yourself back up and get back out there and continue this fight, because, our next generation and all of the ones and all of the salmon and everything that's being affected right now depend on us. That's how crucial it is. Like individually, we can do a lot. If I step back, even for a week, I already feel it, so I want to encourage everybody, like we got to take our turns, and, I'm going to be passing my torch on to the children soon, that this, to continue this fight. This war chest is going to them, and it's like a war chest of intellect, and maybe not weapons the other way, but with intellect and allies and support, so we can continue this fight. So don't stop. Let's just keep going till we get all our land back.
Hi. And Ellen, what would you say?
I'd say if you don't know your language, learn it. because our language belongs to the land. It's part of the land and the culture and the songs. And I, just to expand on what Kanahus says, because I agree everything, those pearls of wisdom that she just gave us, is that, we have something in the Iroquois culture, which is called and we start it. It's the word said before all else. And we start every meeting like that because we are supposed to be mindful of be the voices for the voiceless, of the water, the fish, the trees, the birds. That's who we are supposed to be advocating for as well. So I would say to them that you are not just advocating for you or your family or your nation. You are advocating for all our relations, and that it's going to be tough. Take the time out for yourself, because we've been in it for the long haul. There's no indication that this is going to be resolved anytime soon or in any generation soon. But that life is precious. Water is life. And I hope that they will not have to go through what we have gone through, and that they will have peace when in their generation. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Hi, Taniki to you both. And it's been truly an honor to have this time with you. Thank you for being a guest on Auntie Up. Celeste?
Yeah, I just want to say chimigwech to both of you. You're so inspirational listening to you. I always, so much of what you've shared today makes me resonates with me. And I think about my little guys. My little guys just went hunting for the first time. And, my husband went for the moose and I took them for little partridges. And, they really, I feel that in the end, like those kinds of skills to teach my children how to be in good relations with the land and to be able to look after themselves. I always say, like, when the zombie apocalypse happens or when shit hits the fan, and am I allowed to say that? Sorry, but like really at the end of the day, like that if they know those skills and they have that intimacy with our lands, then I feel that I'll be able to leave this world in a better, knowing I did my job as their mom. And so I'm just so thankful for listening to both of you. Miigwech. So I guess it's my job to also mention that, the next episode of Auntie Up will be co-hosted by Jolene Banning and Kim Wheeler. And they will be talking about cultivating a new business landscape with the owner of Satya Organic Skincare, Patrice Mousseau, and fashion designer and producer Sage Paul, who I know well. So again, miigwech.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Celeste. It was cool to meet you and, co-host this podcast. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'm heading out on the field this Saturday. I'm actually going on a pretty light assignment for once. I'm going up to Tuktoyaktuk. I'm not going to be going into any front lines, and I'm good with that. So, hi, take care. See you next time.
Auntie Up is produced by Jolene Banning, Kim Wheeler, and Sam Makwa for Makwa Creative. Our executive producer is Tanya Talaga. Our partner is Antica Productions. Auntie Up is sponsored by No History and Anna Mickey, Indigenous Innovation since 2003. Follow and like us on socials at Auntie Up Podcast on Facebook, Auntie.up on Instagram, and Auntie Up 1 on Twitter.